Hi, I'm Mike Tolfa with the Vintage Flying Museum. Join us today for our presentation of history in their own words with Hal Monk, lawyer to the stars and United States Air Force veteran.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Vintage Flying Museum. I'm thrilled you're all here. We have a wonderful speaker with us this morning, and he has some amazing stories to tell. I've known Hal a long time. He's one of our board members for the Vintage Flying Museum. He's been on the board, he says, over 15 years. I need to go back to the minutes to see when I can record this. And he just has, his experiences throughout his lifetime are just amazing. So to give you a little bit of what happened, he was born in 1931, so that gives you some idea. He served in the military. He will tell you some fabulous stories about how he got in. Early careers, he was a social worker, a reporter, an investigator for some pretty famous people like Zsa Zsa Gabor. You know who Zsa Zsa is? And Mervyn Belli, he also worked for him. So he's just rubbed shoulders with so many famous people. And please take time to look at the table over here, all his awards. There's a picture with him with President Clinton at the time. He served as the assistant to the Attorney General for the state of Texas. And he became a lawyer, but I'm going to tell you how he did that, because that's most unusual as well. And so, I don't want to talk anymore. Mike's going to be putting up some pictures. This is, how old was he here, Mike?
14?
I believe he's 15.
He's 15 years old here at this time. So they're going to be showing some pictures as Hal goes through the story. So Hal, it's all yours. You can start way back at the beginning.
Well, I guess one of the things I'd like to need to start with about how I got hooked up with the Hospice Family. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. Also, let me caution you, I'll be glad to answer questions or anything like that from you. On the other hand, let me caution you about don't ask a lawyer, do I need to make a will? That's like going into a barber shop and asking, do I need a haircut? Anyway, years ago when I was doing a lot of work with famous lawyer Melvin Belli, San Francisco, and one dreary day in San Francisco, we had I was down in the basement library working thing, and somebody says, guess who came in the reception area up there? I said, I don't know, guess. I said, who? He said, F. Lee Bailey. Well, there I am in the basement of the two most famous lawyers in America. Pretty soon after that, Mel Belli hollering down the steps, Hal, Lee and I are going over to Chinaman's Front. Come go with us. So anyhow, I'm trying to catch up with them. I slept over a curb. It was a dreary, let's say, felt like the concrete deal had flying up and hit me in the rump. But anyhow, I was hurt and went to the hospital and all that. They wanted to keep me. No, I wanted to come back home. When I got back home, I knew I needed to find a surgeon, an osteopath, whatever. And I saw a sign, one about 2 blocks from my office. It's William D. Hospice, D.O. So I made an appointment, went in there, and a lady had me do some paperwork, and I saw a few airplane pictures there, but not much. But then when I got in the treatment room, it was real different. And there I was down on my belly, and Dr. Hospice says, do you own an airplane? I said, well, no, my wife had an adverse reaction to us owning an airplane, and we sold the last one a few years ago. I asked him, I said, do you own an airplane? He said, yeah, I have a B-17. Oh my God, a 4-engine bomber. So I'm shocked and amazed at that. I said, how in the world do you get a wife to give you permission to own a 4-engine airplane? He says, I wouldn't know. I never did get that. I got forgiveness instead. Yeah, sure enough, he and son Bob had gone down to Alabama and found that B-17 that previously had been used as a crop sprayer or duster. But anyway, they was not totally ignorant, because before they came back, before they got it flown back to Fort Worth here, they put some nose art on it. You know, military planes would get nose art, whatever. Anyhow, Doc and Bob got nose art on each side of the B-17 before they headed this way. What they chose for nose art, guess what? Chucky. I mean, well, out in the country, every once in a while I heard an airplane going over, and I think it was in the 4th grade. In Temple, we had to do a book review of some kind. The one I picked was Claire Lee Chenault and the Flying Tigers. Well, from that, I became a little line boy outside of the airport that had just a few little airplanes. And they didn't, it was a job, but they didn't pay me any money, but they just gave me flying lessons. And anyhow, we didn't have a doctor that had in Temple that had the requisite deal to examine pilots. There's one in Waco, so I jumped on my Cushman motor scooter one day and went up and got through the doctor's office and got a student permit. When the lady at the doctor's office, I'd got my mailing address and everything, my date of birth, and didn't act like they doubted anything at all. So I had to fudge a little bit on the date of birth deal. From that, this was my first logbook. Made my first solo flight on my 14th birthday. Then a little bit after that, a good friend of mine named Don Alexander and I were out in the backyard behind my house smoking cigarettes and trying to think up some sort of mischief to get into. But we decided what we needed to do was lie about our age and enlist in the Air Force. So we thought we'd do that. Problem was, each one of us was just 14. Still. But I had a student permit, an official government document, was my proof of age. So sort of hung there for the flyer that we got. The ladies sent out. Where is that?
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. Here you go, Dad.
Anyway, we got at the last minute, Don chickened out on me. He said, no, they'll find out how old we are and throw us in jail. I said, man, I've already quit school and everything. I had to go. So I had to go in. Anyway, after some weird happenstance, I wound up in basic training, the Air Force. Had a constant problem of negotiating with my mother. Each one she'd say, okay, you can go through basic training, because at that time, that might give me some GI Bill benefits. But that's all, just basic training. Well, turned out that as I neared the end of basic training, I got my first choice about a technical school, which was Aircraft and Engine Mechanics School at Keeslerfield, Mississippi. Well, my mother calmed down a little bit about that, and she said, well, it was too late for me to go to be enrolled in school, so she condoned that, well, at least learning a trade might be worthwhile, but as soon as you get out of that, you got to get in school. Well, as I got near the end of tech school here, the top 10 of us, got our choice about what kind of airplane, specialized airplane we wanted on. That's the C-82 there. And this was my picture made when I graduated from there. Got it. Okay, my mother said, okay, you can do that and learn a trade, and then you're getting out of there and going to school. You're going to jump me back to school. But as I ended that, I got my choice about where I wanted to go for regular station, which was Bergstrom Field at Austin, Texas. Well, okay, we was here 65 miles from home, so she was pretty satisfied with it. 65 miles away. Well, then I got to thinking, I joined this dadgum thing to get go to Europe, England, France, Italy, all those faraway places. So I applied to go overseas. Oh my gosh, got sent to Guam. But just about the time I was about to send my mother a letter telling her to go to Congressman Bob Pogue's office and get me the heck out of that miserable place, just about that time, I got transferred to Tachikawa, Japan. Well, at that time, the Air Force had after the end of the war, but they had a few slots for aviation cadet program, which was a combination year-long officer candidate school and aviation training. So anyhow, I didn't think I could make it, but I tried, and then I got in a flight, one night I got in a flight from Okinawa and had a note on the bulletin board to report to the orderly room. Next morning I got up oh man, I was happy because I just knew that this must be that my orders for the cadet program must have come through. I was all smiles, got over there. First sergeant was not smiling at all. So I saw him pick up the file and take it into the squadron commander's office, and pretty soon there was a buzz. He said, go in and report to Major Harper. Well, I'll go in, standing up, report to Major Harper. He's a nice guy. I'd been on his cryo on several things. He didn't tell me to settle down or anything. Pretty soon he says, Sergeant Monk, how old are you? Had to contemplate the condition of my underwear a little bit before I answered that. I said, well, sir, you have my one file there, and it shows I'm about to be 20. He says, mm-hmm. Then he says, yesterday I managed to get a little time on the radio phone and talk to your mother. She says that you're 17. Now, which is correct, your mother or this damn file? Oh, well, I had to go with my mother still, rather than damn file. Well, anyhow, that was my military service. Uh, so I got out of the Air Force pretty quick after that. And I fiddled around a lot with different careers. I was a newspaper reporter for several years, the Austin American Statesman, Brown Daily Eagle, Jackson, Mississippi paper, ran a lot. And, the managed to get out of that. I picked up a few hours of college every once in a while, wherever we landed, and after that newspaper work, I got employed as a
Disc jockey?
well, did a little time as a disc jockey at KXOL Bryan. I had a Saturday afternoon program, open up, kick the thing open. Howdy neighbors, this old hillbilly Lloyd coming at you right out of chute, 1930. Don't you touch that dial, I'll bite your finger. Well, I didn't. So we moved to Fort Worth, and my father-in-law had a good friend who was a lawyer here, Joe Spurlock, and Joe sort of took advantage of my newspaper work and turned me into an investigator. And I worked that a while, and I sort of liked that, and became a social worker, and then did as I was doing some decluttering a few months ago, I found out that the list of my social studies was a little over 1,000 cases. I lucked out, although the situation of Texas admitting people without going to law school was just about all over with. There was just practically nothing left of that. But anyway, what it was, I remember hearing a quote from the chair of the Texas bar exam deal. He says, the legislature can make us examine these people that don't get a law school, but the legislature doesn't tell us that we have to pass any of them. So I thought the prospects were pretty dim, but I thought I'd give it a try. And sure enough, they let me in, let me take the bar exam. And several days after I took the bar exam, but this time I was working for the government in Austin, Office of Personnel Management. Oh, and I'd also graduated from, had a master's degree and a business degree, and was employed with the federal government. And, got a phone call from my wife Betty, and she says, "What are you going to be doing on July so-and-so?" I don't know why. She says, "Well, because you're going to be getting sworn in to the bar." No, that's a big mistake. It couldn't have happened. Because after I came out of that 2.5-day exam, I knew that I'd busted it. But my wife said, I said, "No, there's something wrong." My wife says, "No, it says you're going to be admitted. There must be some sort of mistake there." I thought there was. But then, guess what? Further analysis there were three people that made the same top score, and I knew there was some kind of mistake to that. And for quite a while, I said, I figured they'd find out their mistake and unravel it. But after about 6 months, I figured, well, even if they found out the mistake this late, they probably wouldn't say anything more. I never did hear from them that said anything else except I was one, and there were three of us at the top score. So anyhow, that's how I come to be a lawyer without a legal education. Famous lawyer Melvin Belli was acquainted with Joe Spurlock, that was mostly who I was working for, and so I got acquainted with Belli, and of course, as many of you know about Jack Ruby, killed Lee Harvey Oswald. And so I got there, was in Dallas. Jack Ruby was tried. Belli represented him, but lost it. The court in Dallas convicted Ruby of murder and sentenced him to death. Now Belli jumped into that real heavy and started doing trying to convince the Texas this was a hold on just a minute. There's an amicus curiae brief showing all of the mistakes that the Dallas County Court had made in convicting Jack Ruby, and trying to tell the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, convince them to set aside that. Well, Belli did not want to have to go with the documents with his client Jack Ruby through the jail deal and let the jail staff know what it was. So he made me his errand boy. And the first time I went over there was shortly after the trip here, and I went over and talked to Jack Ruby in jail. And the first time I just took him some information to let him know that lawyer Belli was working on an appeal of his case. And I also asked him some questions about another thing, about how comfortable or discomforted he was in jail. Big jails have typically what is variously called the banana wagon, which is just sort of a thing out of the commissary wheeled around that maybe might have some shaving, might have this, that, and so. And if an inmate has an account set up with money in it, well, they can buy things off of that. And anyway, surprisingly, Mr. Ruby was not complaining about anything except the fact that the banana wagon didn't have any Twinkies for himself. Okay. Well, it was not long after that to where Belli had sent me a copy of the brief to convince the Texas Criminal Appeals that the Dallas court had been wrong. So on my way over there, I thought, oh my gosh, there's a little neighborhood grocery store. I stopped and picked up a package of Twinkies up there. Get over there, and they call Ruby out of jail. And everything. So I want to assure him that Bella is taking care of him, doing the best he can. And I hand him this brief. This is it. He handed it back to me. He said, I don't know anything about all that lawyer crap. And said, about the Twinkies, why in the hell did you just bring me two? So anyway, that was some of my experience with Jack Ruby, his wife and his sister and his brother had a habit of calling me late at night. Miserable. Anyhow, that's worked out. And sure enough, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals agreed with the conclusion here, and so Jack Ruby was still in jail. He had cancer and died here, but he died without his conviction being here. One of the biggest cases I worked on was the Delta 191 crash. I'll tell you how I got there. I think it happened on a Friday afternoon in August. And next morning, I got a call that Bella had been out of his office, but he had his phone call service had a former client of his whose family had been on that Delta 191 crash, and then they and that they were on the way. In other words, the potential clients were on the way from California to Dallas. And then another phone call that the people had arrived and were in a hotel on the premises of the DFW airport. So Bella instructs me, says, these people want to talk to me. And I said, I've tried to return their phone calls, but the telephone operator will not let my calls go through. Well, Bill, my office is about 12, 14 miles away, and I'll go over there and I'll talk to your potential clients to get in jail while trying. Well, I got over there, and fortunately, I got a couple of rooms there because I knew that was going to be necessary. That was a difficult case, so I got in there, and Delta was gathering people up, relatives from all those all over there, and put them up in the hotel there, and assign a pretty airplane hostess to them to see what they could find out about them. Well, that's it, and this was a book by Jerome Chandler, who was a great author then, that said some real nice things about me. But we had wound up with quite a few of those cases. I remember being outside of the hotel on the sidewalk over there, and the fellow on the sidewalk was obviously crying, and I was trying to say, well, what could I do to help him? He says, Delta's treating us like mushrooms. I said, what do you mean by that? I says, well, they're just keeping us in the dark and feeding us, you know what. But that was a case I had with Bella. I remember being in the Sunday school class that I was teaching, by the way, that Bella there asked me what my opinion was about capital murder. Oh, really? My response was that I'm absolutely, unequivocally, absolutely against capital murder in every case except that of T. Cullen Davis. My wife kicked me by the ankle to not do that, but I was very much involved in those cases, and that was my. If there was if there was any chance for capital murder, Cullen Davis should have been killed. I was getting ready for deposition and got my client. I knew that my client had a habit of talking too much, so I got her shed wooded one evening before the defense lawyer was going to take her deposition. So I told her, I said, don't guess, don't just speculate. If you don't know, you don't remember, it's okay to say so if that's the truth and that sort of thing. So the next morning, the opposing lawyer, defense lawyer, was taking her deposition, and anyway, my client there and defense lawyer, Delta's lawyer, asking her simple questions like, what is your residence address, where do you live, what is your full name, this sort of thing. And he said, what is your date of birth? My client says, I don't know. He says, you misunderstood my question. What is your date of birth? My client says, I understood your question perfectly well, and I don't know. Well, that defense lawyer sort of blew up about that, and I'm nudging her and trying to get her to shut up. But anyhow, she talking. She said, before we come here, I talked to Mr. Monk last night, and he says that if I don't remember, I don't know. If that is true, it's okay to say so. Now, do you remember being born? Of course not. It's a stupid damn question. Now ask me something maybe I know for sure. If you haven't read this, my client was Zsa Zsa Gabor. Now I'll tell you another Zsa Zsa story. This was a case that we were getting ready to go to trial on out in Midland. And we got out there about 10 days before that in an upscale motel, and I got a call from the editor of the newspaper there. He wanted to know if he could send a reporter over to interview Ms. Gabor. I thought, well, that'd be nice to have a little publication, humanize her a little bit before the trial. Who knows, we might get readers on the jury. Anyway, I said, sure. Well, as a young man, apparently he's not done much, didn't do much research on that except to find out that she had been married, I think, 8 or 9 times by then. And sort of the same pattern. Everything's preliminary first there. And he asked her, how many husbands have you had? She says, I don't know. I didn't make notes on personal matters like that. Well, that's some of my guts got away. I've been blessed with some good things and let me do what I darn well please a good number of years. Getting tired of getting ready to hang it up now. I'm not sure what my plans will be. I don't plan to, in the aviation area, I don't plan to lay another wrench on the boat or fly another airplane solo, but I'm getting me a rocking chair to put on my back porch, and if I get to feeling real frisky, I might even rock a little bit. So, thank you all for coming. I appreciate you being here so very much. And
Do any of you have any questions for Hal? Yes, there's a question back here.
I understand you have a very interesting client from England. Tell them about Mr. Eddowes. This is back to
Oh.
the
Oh, yeah.
JFK era.
Oh yeah, okay. On Lee Harvey Oswald, there's been a lot of conspiracy theories. About that, but a British author, Michael Eddowes, had the more credible ones. He was a lawyer, investigator from England, and had done some investigation work on a guy named Timothy Evans, who had been charged with murder of his wife and convicted there. Mr. Eddowes had embarked on a project there that resulted in capital punishment being abandoned in England at that time. Mr. Eddowes had there were two things that one, Lee Harvey Oswald had a dent right back here where as a child he had had a mastoidectomy that left a scar there that was very obvious. That was one thing. And in the Dallas Police Department, the day after he had shot John F. Kennedy, he didn't have any evidence of that. The other thing was, Lee Harvey Oswald's wife, Marina, told a story that didn't compare there. She said that they had met and dated about 8 times before she knew that he was an American or an imposter. Mr. Eddowes' story was that the real Lee Harvey Oswald had been captured in Russia or even killed by a KGB or whatever, but that Marina they'd had about 8 days before she had any idea that he was an American or She said he spoke perfect Russian with a slight Baltic States accent. Well, all of the evidence is that Lee Harvey Oswald was never a high IQ person by a jugful. But he was, by his school records, he was dumber than dirt. But just in a short time after he got out of the Marine Corps, he went straight away to Russia and spoke perfect Russian. It made sense. But anyway, got those stuff. He wanted to exhume Lee Harvey Oswald's body. And Marina wanted it too. She was not sure that there was anybody in the grave. So that's where we got started working to exhume Oswald's body. And Oswald's brother, Robert, lived in Wichita Falls, and he just stuck his nose into the business right and left, trying to stop the exhumation. I had quite a few visits with Marina. In fact, Marina was our client during that phase. And Marguerite, Oswald's mother, she was up and down. She was sort of dingy, very dingy. Mr. Eddowes talked to her and got arrangements made for me to go see her. I went over there with my wife Betty, and her home was over in Arlington Heights, and her attic fan that sucks air up into the attic was broken. She was apologetic about not having air conditioning or anything. Anyhow, I said, well, what's the matter with it? She said, I don't know. I turned the switch on. Yeah, it sounded. There's a motor, the electric deal was running. I got up there with a flashlight and looked, and the motor was running, but the fan wasn't. But there was a broken fan belt there. So I left my wife Betty to visit with Miss Oswald while I went down to Buddy's Hardware and got a new belt and put it on there, and it worked beautifully. Oh, I thought that old woman was going to fall in love with me. Anyway, so at that time, she was absolutely having an agreement about the exhumation. But then Robert, his physicist, got in touch with her, and she was up and down about it. So that was quite a legal battle to get that done. But we did do the exhumation and carried it over to Big Baylor Hospital in Dallas, and a lot of what was found in the body is matched exactly some stuff that medical records, Oswald's medical records, fit perfectly. So we had some great scientists tell us that, yes, that was the same body as that body in Leo was the same body as was in the Marine Corps under Lee Harvey Oswald.
Thank you, Hal. We really appreciate you being here today and telling your stories. And there's still more stories if you'd like to stay. And if he's up to it, you can come up and talk to him. There's still a lot of things with Pete Knievel and with, what was the other
Colin
one?
Davis.
And
Colin
Colin
Davis.
Davis. Oh, Colin Davis. His story about Colin Davis is incredible too. So, but Hal, I do want to present you with something. And it's a few little things from the Vintage Flying Museum. Okay.
Oh, over.
There you are. This is from the Vintage Flying Museum. This is from the Vintage Flying Museum.
And I have to talk to you. Take out this paper.
Okay.
Oh, look, Daddy.
You got a mug for your coffee with the logo. With the mouse pad.
Oh, I missed it.
Here.
Oh, look.
For your
Daddy.
computer.
For your computer, Daddy. You're all fixed up. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming, and somebody might want to come up and ask you some more questions, Daddy. Thank you all so much.
So if any of you would like to come up and talk with Hal, feel free. Be sure to come over here to see all his memorabilia over here. And night.
I was going to see one for you.
Thank you for joining us for History in Their Own Words presentation with Hal Monk. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back and see us again.